The socket wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered to the concrete floor of my garage. 37 years old, and I still couldn't keep a grip on the simple things in life. The irony wasn't lost on me as I wiped my hands on an old shop rag and looked up at my wife standing in the doorway. Kara had that look again. The one she'd been wearing for weeks now, like she was carrying around a secret too heavy for her perfectly manicured shoulders. Her real estate blazer was wrinkled, which was unusual. Kara never had a hair out of place, let alone wrinkled clothes. "Eli," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." I'd been expecting this conversation for a while now. The late nights, the constant texting, the way she'd started looking at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered into her house by mistake. I just hadn't expected it to happen while I was elbow deep in the engine of my 1987 Chevy pickup. "Can it wait?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I'm trying to get this timing belt replaced before tomorrow." She stepped into the garage, her heels clicking against the concrete. Even in crisis mode, Kara dressed like she was about to show $1 million property. It was one of the things I'd fallen for when we met 15 years ago. Now it just reminded me of how different we'd become. "No, it can't wait." She took a deep breath, the kind people take before jumping off a cliff. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between us like exhaust fumes. I set down my wrench and really looked at her for the first time in months. There was something different about her face, a fullness I hadn't noticed before, or maybe I just hadn't been paying attention. "Pregnant," I repeated, testing the word. "That's unexpected." She nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. But they weren't happy tears. They were the kind that came with guilt and shame and the weight of secrets finally being spoken out loud. "There's more," she said. Of course there was. There always was with Kara. She couldn't just tell you it was raining without also mentioning the storm that was coming next week. "The baby isn't yours, Eli." Now that was a punch to the gut I hadn't seen coming. I sat down hard on my work stool, the metal legs scraping against the concrete. The garage suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in on me. "Whose is it?" I asked, though part of me already knew. There had been signs, little things. The way she'd started mentioning Matt Collins more often in conversation, how she'd suddenly become interested in attending Emily's soccer games when Matt was coaching. The late-night phone calls she claimed were work-related. "Matt's," she whispered. "Matt Collins. My best friend since high school. The guy who'd been best man at our wedding, Emily's godfather. The man I'd trusted with my family's secrets and my wife's friendship." "How long?" I asked. 6 months? 6 months. Half a year of lies and sneaking around and playing happy family while she was carrying another man's child. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to yell and throw things and demand explanations. Instead, I felt oddly calm. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was relief that the waiting was finally over. "He wanted to be a father," Kara continued, as if that explained everything. "You know how much he's always wanted kids, and we gave each other what we needed." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound came out harsh and bitter, echoing off the garage walls. "Well, congratulations. You both get what you want." She looked surprised, like she'd been expecting me to explode or beg her to stay or promise to raise Matt's child as my own. But I'd learned a long time ago that the best way to handle Kara was to stay calm and let her dig her own grave. "That's it?" she asked. "That's all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say, Kara? That I'm happy for you? That I hope you and Matt have a wonderful life together? That I'll gladly step aside so you can play house with my best friend?" She flinched at the sarcasm in my voice. "Good. Let her be uncomfortable for once." "I didn't plan for this to happen," she said. "But you didn't exactly fight it either, did you?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Before she could answer, I heard footsteps on the driveway. Emily's voice called out from the house, asking if dinner was ready. Our 17-year-old daughter, home from soccer practice, oblivious to the fact that her world was about to implode. "We'll tell her together," Kara said quickly. "Tonight, after dinner." "Tell her what, exactly? That Mommy and Uncle Matt are having a baby? That Daddy's moving out? That everything she thought she knew about her family was a lie?" Kara's face crumpled. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." "Harder than it has to be?" I stood up, wiping my hands on the rag again. "Kara, you just told me you're pregnant with my best friend's baby. I'm not the one making this hard." Emily appeared in the garage doorway, her soccer cleats dangling from her hand. She looked between us, sensing the tension, but not understanding its source. "Everything okay?" she asked. Kara immediately switched into mom mode, pasting on a bright smile. Everything's fine, honey. Your dad and I were just talking about some changes that are coming. What kind of changes? I watched Kara struggle for words, and something cold settled in my chest. She was going to spin this, make me the bad guy, paint herself as the victim of circumstances beyond her control. Your father has been keeping some secrets from us, Kara said carefully. Adult secrets that affect our family. Emily's eyes widened, and she looked at me with a mixture of confusion and hurt. In that moment, I realized what Kara was doing. She was getting ahead of the story, controlling the narrative before I had a chance to defend myself. Is that true, Dad? Emily asked. I looked at my daughter, this beautiful, intelligent young woman who still believed her parents were heroes and her family was unbreakable. How do you explain to someone like that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who hurt you worst? It's complicated, Em, I said finally. She studied my face, searching for answers I couldn't give her. Not yet. Not like this. I'm going to my room, she said, backing away from both of us. Call me when you figure out how to be honest with each other. She disappeared into the house, leaving Kara and me alone in the garage with the weight of 15 years of marriage and one devastating confession between us. Nice work, I said, already turning her against me. I'm not turning her against anyone. I'm trying to protect her. From what? The truth? Kara straightened her shoulders, and I could see her real estate agent persona sliding into place. Cool, professional, ready to negotiate. What do you want, Eli? Money? The house? I'll be reasonable. What did I want? That was the question, wasn't it? 6 months ago, I would have said I wanted my family to stay together. I wanted my wife to love me, and my daughter to respect me, and my best friend to actually be my friend. Now I wasn't sure what I wanted, except for the sick feeling in my stomach to go away. I want you to leave, I said. Tonight? Eventually. But for now, I want you to get out of my garage so I can finish fixing my truck. Tomorrow's a work day, and some of us still have jobs that matter. She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. We'll talk more later. Yeah, I said, picking up my wrench. I'm sure we will. After she left, I stood alone in the garage, surrounded by the familiar smells of motor oil and metal shavings. This was my space, the one place in the house where I felt completely in control. But even here, I couldn't escape the reality of what had just happened. My wife was pregnant with my best friend's baby. My daughter thought I was the one keeping secrets. And somewhere across town, Matt Collins was probably celebrating the fact that he was finally going to be a father. I looked at the family photo tacked to my workbench. It was from last Christmas, all three of us smiling at the camera like we didn't have a care in the world. Emily in the middle, Kara and me on either side, looking like the perfect American family. The game had just changed, and for the first time in months, I felt like I might actually know how to play it. The next morning, I woke up alone. Kara had spent the night in the guest room, which was fine by me. I'd slept better than I had in weeks, which probably said something about the state of our marriage that I didn't want to think about too deeply. I got dressed in my usual work clothes, jeans, flannel shirt, steel-toed boots, and headed downstairs. Emily was already gone, probably catching a ride to school with one of her friends. There was a note on the kitchen counter in Kara's handwriting. Gone to show properties. We'll talk tonight. I crumpled up the note and tossed it in the trash. Then I made myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table to think. 15 years of marriage, 17 years of friendship with Matt, a daughter who was about to graduate high school and head off to college, a business I'd built from nothing into something I was proud of, all of it about to come crashing down because two people I trusted couldn't keep their hands off each other. But maybe it didn't have to crash. Maybe I could control the landing. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for our bank. 20 minutes later, I'd transferred half our savings into a new account that only I could access. It wasn't stealing. The money was as much mine as Kara's. More mine, actually, since I'd been the primary breadwinner for most of our marriage. Next, I called our lawyer. Not to file for divorce, not yet, but to ask some hypothetical questions about property division and parental rights. The house was in my name, something we'd done years ago to take advantage of a tax break. At the time, it had seemed like smart financial planning. Now it felt like providence. By the time I got to the garage, I had a plan. Not a complete plan, but the beginning of one. And for the first time since Kara's confession, I felt like I had some control over my life. You look like hell, Ricky Martinez said as I walked into the shop. Ricky was my lead mechanic, a wiry guy in his 30s with tattoos covering both arms and a loyalty that ran deeper than family. He'd been working for me for 8 years, and in that time, He'd never once let me down. "Thanks for the pep talk," I said, grabbing my coveralls from the hook by my office door. "Seriously, boss, what's eating you?" I considered telling him everything. Ricky was discreet, and he had a practical way of looking at problems that I found comforting, but I wasn't ready to make this public yet. I needed time to figure out my next moves. "Just some stuff at home," I said. "Nothing I can't handle." He nodded and went back to the transmission he was rebuilding. Ricky understood that some problems were private, at least until they stopped being private. I spent the morning working on routine maintenance, oil changes, brake jobs, the kind of mindless work that let my brain process what was happening in my personal life. Around noon, I decided to take a drive. The Rusty Anchor was exactly the kind of bar you'd expect to find in a Maine town like ours. Dark wood paneling, neon beer signs, and a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the Clinton administration. It was also the unofficial headquarters for local gossip, presided over by Marge Kellerman, a woman in her 60s who knew more about everyone's business than the FBI. "Little early for you, isn't it, Eli?" Marge asked as I settled onto a bar stool. "Just a Coke," I said, "and maybe some conversation." She poured my drink and leaned against the bar. "What kind of conversation?" "The kind about Matt Collins and my wife." Marge's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Knowledge. Confirmation of what I already suspected. "What about them?" she asked carefully. "How long have people been talking?" She sighed and wiped down the bar with a dish rag. "Couple months, maybe more. You know how it is in a small town. People see things, they talk." "What kind of things?" "Late nights, parking lots, the kind of body language that says more than words do." She looked at me directly. "I'm sorry, Eli. I thought about saying something, but it wasn't my place." "It's okay," I said, and I meant it. I needed to hear it from them first. "What are you going to do?" That was the question everyone would be asking soon enough. What was Eli Mason going to do about his cheating wife and backstabbing best friend? The expected answer was probably to make a scene, maybe throw some punches, definitely make everyone in town choose sides. But I'd never been one for the expected answer. "I'm going to be smart about it," I said. Marge smiled, and I could see approval in her expression. "Good. Smart beats angry every time." I finished my Coke and headed back to the shop, but instead of going inside, I drove to the high school. Matt's truck was in the parking lot, a shiny new Ford that he'd bought with his coaching bonus. I parked next to it and waited. 20 minutes later, Matt came walking across the parking lot, gym bag slung over his shoulder. He was a good-looking guy, I had to give him that. Tall, athletic, with the kind of easy smile that made people trust him, the kind of smile that had fooled me for 20 years. "Eli," he called out when he saw me, "what brings you by?" "Just wanted to congratulate you," I said, getting out of my truck. "Congratulate me? For what?" "Becoming a father. At your age, no less. That takes real stamina." The smile slipped from his face, and I saw panic flash in his eyes. He looked around the parking lot, checking to see if anyone was within earshot. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Sure you do. Kara told me everything last night. About the baby, about the 6 months of sneaking around, about how you always wanted to be a dad." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head, trying to figure out how to play this. "Look, Eli, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You screwed my wife. She got pregnant. Now you get to play daddy while I get to play the fool." A couple of students walked by, glancing at us curiously. Matt forced his smile back into place and waved at them. "We can't talk about this here," he said. "Why not? Afraid people might overhear? Might find out that the beloved Coach Collins isn't quite the stand-up guy everyone thinks he is? Eli, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How you decided my wife was fair game? How you looked me in the eye every Sunday at barbecues while you were planning your next rendezvous? How you're going to be godfather and biological father to the same kid?" He was sweating now, despite the cool October air. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. But it did happen, and now we all have to live with the consequences. I got back in my truck and rolled down the window. "Congratulations again, Matt. I hope fatherhood is everything you dreamed it would be." I drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot looking like he'd just been hit by a truck. In my rearview mirror, I could see him pulling out his phone, probably calling Kara to tell her about our conversation. Good. Let them panic. Let them wonder what I was planning. The uncertainty would eat at them more than any direct confrontation ever could. Back at the shop, I found Ricky waiting for me with a strange expression on his face. "Boss, you got a visitor," he said, Sam Voss is in your office." Samantha Voss was Kara's best friend, a recently divorced real estate agent who'd been part of our social circle for years. She was also one of the sharpest people I knew, with a talent for reading between the lines that made her dangerous in the wrong circumstances. I found her sitting in my office chair, looking perfectly at home among my invoices and parts catalogs. "Hello, Eli," she said. "I think we need to talk." "Seems like everyone wants to talk today. Must be something in the water." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Kara called me this morning. She's worried about you." "Is she now? That's touching." "She thinks you might do something rash." I sat down in the chair across from my own desk, studying Sam's face. She was attractive in a sharp-edged way, with blonde hair and green eyes that missed nothing. Her divorce had been ugly, and she'd come out of it with a healthy skepticism about marriage and fidelity. "What would you consider rash?" I asked. "Violence, public scenes, anything that might hurt Emily? And what would you consider appropriate?" She leaned back in my chair, considering the question. "Honestly, I'd consider burning their lives to the ground. But I'm not known for my restraint." That surprised me. "I thought you were here to talk me out of doing anything stupid." "Oh, I am. But that doesn't mean I don't understand the urge." She leaned forward, her expression serious. "Kara's my friend, Eli, but what she did was wrong. What they both did was wrong. And if you're smart about how you handle this, you'll come out on top." "Smart how?" "You're a business owner. You understand leverage. Right now they're scared and guilty and making mistakes. Use that." I thought about Matt's face in the parking lot, the way he'd looked around nervously when I'd raised my voice. "They're already making mistakes." "Exactly. And they'll make more if you keep the pressure on without doing anything they can use against you in court. Court, divorce proceedings, custody battles, the ugly machinery of a marriage falling apart." I hadn't wanted to think about that part yet, but Sam was right. It was coming whether I was ready or not. "What do you know about their plans?" I asked. "I know Kara's been looking at apartments. I know Matt's been asking around about custody lawyers. I know they think you're going to roll over and let them have whatever they want." "And what do you think?" She smiled, and this time it did reach her eyes. "I think they don't know you as well as they think they do." After Sam left, I sat in my office thinking about leverage and mistakes and the difference between being angry and being smart. Outside, I could hear Ricky working on the transmission, the familiar sounds of tools and machinery that had been the soundtrack to my adult life. My phone buzzed with a text message from Emily. "Mom says you're having problems. Are you okay?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding, "I'm fine. See you at dinner." But I wasn't fine. I was angry and hurt, and betrayed by the two people I'd trusted most. The difference was, I was also starting to see a way forward, a way to make sure that when the dust settled, I wouldn't be the one left with nothing. The game was just beginning, and I was finally ready to play. The confrontation I'd been dreading came 3 days later, over what should have been a normal family dinner. Emily had made spaghetti, her specialty since middle school, and we were all sitting around the kitchen table pretending everything was normal. "I talked to Coach Collins today," Emily said, twirling pasta around her fork. "He seemed weird, distracted." Kara and I exchanged glances across the table. We'd been walking on eggshells around each other for days, maintaining a facade of civility for Emily's sake while privately maneuvering for position. "Weird how?" Kara asked. "I don't know. Just not himself. He kept asking about you guys, about how things were at home." Emily looked between us. "Is there something going on that I should know about?" The moment of truth. I could feel Kara tense beside me, waiting to see how I'd play it. "Your mother has something to tell you," I said. Kara shot me a look that could have melted steel. "We both have something to tell you," Emily set down her fork. "Okay, now you're scaring me. What's going on?" Kara took a deep breath, and I could see her shifting into the same mode she used with difficult clients. Calm, controlled, ready to manage the situation. "Your father and I are separating," she said. Emily's face went white. "What? Why?" "Sometimes adults grow apart," Kara continued. "It's no one's fault. It just happens." "That's not exactly true," I said. "Eli, don't." "Don't what? Tell her the truth? She's 17, Kara. She's not a child." Emily looked back and forth between us, confusion and fear written all over her face. "What truth? What's going on?" I looked at my daughter, this young woman who still believed in fairy tales and happy endings, and felt my heart break a little, but she deserved to know what was happening to her family. "Your mother is pregnant," I said, "with Matt's baby." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily stared at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language, then turned to look at her mother. "Is that true?" she whispered. Kara's composure finally cracked. Tears started streaming down her face as she nodded. "Oh, God," Emily said, pushing back from the table. "Oh, God, Mom, how could you?" "Honey, please let me explain." "Explain what? That you cheated on Dad? That you're having Uncle Matt's baby? What is there to explain?" Emily stood up so fast her chair fell over backward. She looked at both of us with a mixture of disgust and heartbreak that I knew would haunt me for years. "I can't be here right now," she said, and ran upstairs. We heard her bedroom door slam, followed by the sound of muffled sobbing. Kara started to get up, but I caught her arm. "Give her some time," I said. "She hates me." "She's hurt. There's a difference." Kara pulled her arm free and glared at me. "You didn't have to tell her like that. You could have been more gentle." "Gentle? Kara, you've been lying to her for 6 months. To both of us. I think we're past gentle. I was trying to protect her. You were trying to protect yourself." We sat in silence for a while, listening to Emily cry upstairs. Finally, Kara spoke. "What happens now? Now you figure out where you're going to live, because you can't stay here. This is my home too, Eli." "No, it's not. It's my house. My name on the deed, remember? That tax break you were so excited about? Turns out it has consequences." Her face went pale. "You can't just throw me out." "I'm not throwing you out. I'm asking you to leave. There's a difference." "And Emily?" "Emily can choose for herself. She's old enough." But when Emily finally came downstairs 2 hours later, her choice surprised both of us. "I'm going to stay with Uncle Matt for a while," she announced. "Emily, no," I said. "You don't have to choose sides." "I'm not choosing sides. I'm choosing to be with the people who are going to need me most." She looked at me with eyes that were older than they'd been that morning. "Mom's pregnant and scared. Uncle Matt's about to be a father for the first time. They need support. And I don't? You're the strongest person I know, Dad. You'll be fine." She hugged me then, and I could smell her shampoo and feel the tension in her shoulders. My little girl, trying to hold everyone else together while her world fell apart. "I love you," I whispered into her hair. "I love you too. But I can't watch you and Mom tear each other apart." She packed a bag and left with Kara that night. The house felt enormous and empty without them, like a museum of a life I used to live. I walked through the rooms, looking at family photos and Emily's artwork still stuck to the refrigerator, and tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. The answer came to me as I was sitting in my garage, drinking a beer and staring at my half-finished truck. It had gone wrong because I'd trusted the wrong people, because I'd believed that loyalty and friendship and marriage vows meant something, because I'd been naive enough to think that the people I loved would never deliberately hurt me. Well, I wasn't naive anymore. The next morning, I drove to Matt's house. It was a modest ranch-style place in a neighborhood that had seen better days, the kind of place a high school coach could afford on his salary. Kara's car was in the driveway next to Matt's truck. I didn't knock. I used the spare key I knew Matt kept under a fake rock by his front door, the same way I had dozens of times over the years when I'd come by to watch games or help with yard work. I found them in the kitchen, sitting at Matt's small table, drinking coffee like a normal couple. They looked up when I walked in, and I saw fear flash across both their faces. "Morning," I said pleasantly. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Eli, what are you doing here?" Kara asked. "Just wanted to see how you were settling in. Make sure you have everything you need." Matt stood up slowly, like he was afraid sudden movements might set me off. "Maybe you should call before coming over." "Why? We're all friends here, right? All family." I sat down at the table without being invited. "Where's Emily?" "School," Kara said. "Good. She shouldn't miss any more school than necessary. Senior year is important." They exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to handle my casual demeanor. "What do you want, Eli?" Matt asked. "Want? I don't want anything. I'm just trying to understand how this is going to work. You and Kara, playing house. Me, living alone in the house I've been paying for while you raise your kid in this." I looked around the small kitchen with its outdated appliances and peeling linoleum. "Well, it's cozy?" "We're looking for a bigger place," Kara said defensively. "With what money? Matt's coaching salary? Your real estate commissions?" I laughed. "Good luck with that, especially once word gets around town about your situation." "What's that supposed to mean?" Matt asked. "Come on, Matt. You know how this town works. People talk, they judge, they choose sides." I leaned back in my chair. "How do you think Principal Tisdale is going to react when he finds out his star coach got his best friend's wife pregnant? How do you think the parents are going to feel about having their kids coached by someone with such questionable judgment? The color drained from Matt's face. You wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Tell the truth? Share the good news about your impending fatherhood? Why would I keep it a secret? You two certainly didn't. Kara reached across the table and grabbed my arm. Eli, please, think about Emily. Think about what this will do to her. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back up at her face. I am thinking about Emily. I'm thinking about how she's going to feel when her friends' parents start whispering about her family, when she realizes that everyone in town knows her mother cheated and her godfather betrayed her father. Stop, she whispered. Why? You didn't stop. You had 6 months to think about the consequences, and you didn't stop. I stood up. But don't worry, I'm not going to say anything. I don't have to. What do you mean? Matt asked. I mean, people already know. They've been watching you two for months. Marge at the Rusty Anchor, the parents at Emily's games. Half the town has been waiting to see what I'd do about it. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Matt, you might want to think about getting a lawyer. I have a feeling you're going to need one. I left them sitting at the table, looking like I just dropped a bomb in their kitchen, which in a way I had. The truth was, I hadn't decided yet whether to make their affair public, but the threat was almost as powerful as the action would be. Let them spend the next few days wondering what I was planning, looking over their shoulders, jumping at every phone call. Fear was a powerful motivator, and for the first time since this whole mess started, they were the ones who were afraid. 2 weeks later, I put the house up for sale. I didn't tell Kara I was going to do it. I didn't ask for her permission or give her a chance to object. I simply called a real estate agent, not one from Kara's company, and had them plant a for sale sign in my front yard. The first I heard about Kara's reaction was when Sam called me at the shop. She's losing her mind, Sam said without preamble, screaming about how you can't sell the house without her consent, threatening to call her lawyer, the whole 9 yards. Can I asked. Sell it without her consent? House is in your name only, right? Right. Then yes, you can do whatever you want with it. She might be entitled to half the proceeds in a divorce settlement, but she can't stop you from selling. I smiled, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in weeks. Good to know. Eli, what are you doing? What do you mean? I mean, where are you planning to live if you sell the house? I'll figure something out. Maybe get an apartment. Maybe buy something smaller. And leave Kara and Matt scrambling to find a place they can afford? That's not my problem anymore. There was a pause on the other end of the line. You know what? You're right. It's not your problem. And it's about time you started acting like it. The house sold faster than I'd expected. Apparently there was a shortage of decent family homes in our price range, and I'd priced it to move quickly. Within a month, I had a closing date and a check that would set me up nicely for whatever came next. I used some of the money to buy a small condo closer to town, a place with a garage where I could still work on cars, and a view of the harbor that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with Maine in the first place. It was smaller than the house, but it was mine. Completely, unquestionably mine. The rest of the money went into investments and a college fund for Emily. Whatever else happened, I wanted to make sure she was taken care of. Kara and Matt, meanwhile, were struggling to find housing they could afford. Matt's salary wasn't enough to cover a mortgage on anything decent, and Kara's real estate business had taken a hit as word of the affair spread through town. Turns out people don't like doing business with someone they see as untrustworthy. They ended up in a cramped apartment above the pizza place on Main Street, the kind of place college kids rented when they couldn't afford anything better. Every time I drove past and saw Kara's car parked out front, I felt a grim satisfaction. But my real masterstroke came when I finally decided to make Matt's situation public. I didn't spread rumors or gossip. I didn't have to. Instead, I simply made sure that certain facts became impossible to ignore. It started with a conversation with Principal Tisdale at the hardware store. We ran into each other in the paint aisle, and he asked how I was holding up. It's been tough, I said. Finding out your wife is pregnant with your best friend's baby? Well, it changes your perspective on things. Tisdale's face went white. I'm sorry, what did you say? Oh, I thought you knew. Matt and Kara are having a baby together, due in the spring, I think. I said it casually, like I was commenting on the weather, like it was common knowledge that everyone was already aware of. Matt Collins, the coach? That's the one. Funny how life works out, isn't it? I bought my paint and left Tisdale standing in the aisle, looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Within a week, Matt was called into the principal's office for a meeting about maintaining professional standards. Within 2 weeks, there was a formal investigation into his conduct. Within a month, he was suspended pending the outcome of that investigation. The loss of income was devastating for their little family. Without Matt's salary, they couldn't even afford the apartment above the pizza place. They had to move in with Kara's sister in the next town over, crowding into a house that was already too small for the people living there. Emily called me the night they moved out of the apartment. "Dad, what's happening?" she asked, and I could hear tears in her voice. "Everything's falling apart." "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this." "Are you doing this? Are you making these things happen?" The question hit me harder than I'd expected. My daughter asking if I was the villain in this story. "I'm protecting myself," I said finally, "and I'm making sure there are consequences for the choices people make. But Mom's pregnant. She needs stability. Your mother should have thought about that before she got pregnant with another man's baby. Dad, please, can't you just let it go? For my sake?" I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her disappointment. Some things can't be let go. Some betrayals are too big to forgive. "So you're going to destroy their lives?" "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not protecting them from the consequences of their own actions anymore." She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know who you are anymore. I'm the same person I've always been. I'm just not pretending that being nice is more important than being respected." After she hung up, I sat in my new condo, looking out at the harbor and wondering if I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. But then I thought about the 6 months of lies, the betrayal by my best friend, the way they'd expected me to just accept their choices without consequences. No, I wasn't becoming someone different. I was finally becoming myself. The final humiliation came at the annual town Christmas festival. It was held in the high school gymnasium, the same place where I'd watched Emily play basketball and attended school board meetings and pretended to be part of a community that actually cared about loyalty and commitment. I almost didn't go, but Sam convinced me that staying away would look like I was hiding, like I was ashamed of something. "Show up," she said. "Be visible. Let people see that you're doing fine while they're falling apart." So I went. I wore my best shirt and newest jeans, and I walked into that gymnasium with my head held high. Kara was there with Matt and Emily, standing near the refreshment table and trying to look like a happy family. But I could see the strain in their faces, the way they kept glancing around to see who was watching them, who was whispering about them. Matt had lost weight since his suspension. He looked older, worn down by the stress of unemployment and public disgrace. Kara was showing now, her pregnancy visible to anyone who looked closely, which made their situation impossible to hide even if they'd wanted to. I made my way through the crowd, accepting condolences and support from neighbors and friends. It was amazing how many people suddenly wanted to tell me what a good man I was, how sorry they were about what had happened, how much they admired the way I was handling things. "You're better off without her," old Mrs. Patterson told me. "Always thought that girl had ideas above her station." "Matt Collins should be ashamed of himself," said Bob Henley from the auto parts store. "Betraying a friend like that, it's not right." The comments went on and on, a steady stream of validation that felt both satisfying and hollow. These people were choosing sides, and they'd chosen mine. But their support felt conditional, like it would disappear the moment I stopped being the wronged party and became something else. I was standing near the basketball hoop, watching Emily help serve cookies when Matt approached me. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. "Sure. What's on your mind?" He glanced around, making sure no one was within earshot. "This has to stop, Eli." "What has to stop?" "You know what. The campaign to destroy my life. The whispers, the rumors, the way you've turned this whole town against me." I looked at him with genuine surprise. "I haven't turned anyone against you, Matt. I've barely said a word about you to anyone." "Bullshit. You told Tisdale about the baby. You've been spreading the story all over town." I told Tisdale the truth when he asked how I was doing. As for spreading stories, I shrugged. People talk, Matt. They see things, they draw conclusions. I can't control what other people think or say. "You could if you wanted to." "Maybe, but why would I want to?" His face flushed red. "Because we used to be friends. Because you know I never meant for this to happen." "But it did happen, and now you get to live with the consequences." "What about Emily? What about what this is doing to her?" That one stung, because he was right. Emily was suffering, caught between her loyalty to me and her desire to support her mother and the man she still thought of as her uncle. "Emily will be fine," I said. "She's stronger than you think." "She's 17 years old, Eli. Her family is falling apart, and you're making it worse." "I'm not making anything worse. I'm just not making it better." He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him trying to figure out if there was anything he could say that would reach me. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "What would it take for you to back off?" "I want you to disappear," I said. I want you to take your pregnant girlfriend and leave town. Start over somewhere else where people don't know what you did. I can't do that. My job? You don't have a job. You're suspended, remember? And even if they don't fire you, do you really think you can go back to coaching here? Do you think the parents are going to trust you with their kids? He looked around the gymnasium, at the families laughing and talking and celebrating the holidays together, and I could see the reality of his situation finally sinking in. This is my home, he said quietly. Not anymore. I walked away then, leaving him standing alone near the basketball hoop while his pregnant girlfriend served cookies and his goddaughter pretended everything was normal. As I headed for the exit, I caught sight of Emily watching me from across the room. There was something in her expression that I couldn't quite read. Disappointment, maybe, or recognition. Maybe she was finally seeing who her father really was, and maybe, for the first time in months, I was okay with that. The DNA test results arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, delivered by certified mail to an address I didn't recognize. The envelope was addressed to Matt Collins, but somehow it ended up in my hands courtesy of Sam, who had her ways of finding out things that weren't meant for her to know. I sat in my condo's kitchen, holding the envelope and wondering if I really wanted to know what was inside. Part of me was curious. Part of me didn't want to give Matt and Kara the satisfaction of caring about their baby's paternity. But curiosity won out, as it usually does. I opened the envelope carefully, trying not to damage the contents too much. The results were printed on official letterhead from a medical laboratory in Portland, full of technical language and genetic markers that meant nothing to me. But the conclusion was clear enough. Matt Collins was not the biological father of the child Kara was carrying. I read the results 3 times, making sure I understood what I was seeing. Then I sat back in my chair and started laughing, not the bitter, sarcastic laugh that had become my default response to this whole situation. This was genuine amusement, the kind that comes from witnessing cosmic justice in action. Matt wasn't the father, which meant that either I was, despite the timing being wrong, or there was a third man involved that neither of us knew about. I thought back to the timeline Kara had given me. 6 months pregnant, she'd said. The baby was Matt's, she'd said. But if Matt wasn't the father, then either she'd been lying about the timeline or she'd been lying about the father. Or both. I pulled out my phone and called Sam. "You need to see this," I said when she answered. "See what?" "Just come over and bring a bottle of wine. We're going to need it." She arrived 20 minutes later with a bottle of red wine and a curious expression. "What's got you so excited?" she asked. I handed her the DNA test results without saying a word. I watched her face as she read them, saw her eyes widen as she reached the same conclusion I had. "Holy hell," she said. "Yeah." "Matt's not the father." "Nope." She looked up at me. "Do you think you are?" "I don't know. Maybe. The timing would be tight, but it's possible." "Or there's someone else." "Or there's someone else." She poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one. "What are you going to do with this information?" That was the question, wasn't it? I had proof that the entire foundation of Kara and Matt's relationship was built on a lie. Matt had blown up his career and his reputation for a baby that wasn't even his. Kara had destroyed our marriage for a man who wasn't even the father of her child. The possibilities for revenge were endless. "I'm going to think about it," I said, but I didn't have to think for long. The opportunity presented itself 2 days later when I got a call from Emily. "Dad, can you come over?" she asked. "We need to talk." She was staying at Kara's sister's house, the cramped ranch where they'd all been living since Matt lost his job. I'd been there once before, right after Emily graduated high school, for an awkward celebration dinner that no one really wanted to attend. I found Emily sitting on the front steps, looking older than her 18 years. She was wearing jeans and a college sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that reminded me of Kara at that age. "What's going on?" I asked, sitting down beside her. "I'm leaving for college next week," she said. "I know. I'm proud of you." "Are you? Because it doesn't feel like it." I looked at her profile, trying to read her expression. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've spent the last 6 months destroying my family, and now you're acting like everything's normal." "Emily, no, let me finish." She turned to face me, and I could see tears in her eyes. "I know what Mom did was wrong. I know Uncle Matt betrayed you, but what you've done since then, it's been cruel." The word hit me like a physical blow. Cruel. Is that what I'd become? "I was protecting myself," I said. "You were punishing them. There's a difference. They deserve to be punished. Maybe, but I didn't deserve to watch my father turn into someone I don't recognize." I wanted to argue with her, to explain that I was still the same person, that I just stopped being a pushover, but looking at her face, I realized that maybe she was right. Maybe I had become someone different. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "I want you to let it go. I want you to stop trying to hurt them and start trying to heal." "I don't know if I can do that." "Then maybe you're not the man I thought you were." She stood up and started walking toward the house, then turned back. "Oh, and Dad? There's something else you should know. The baby Mom's carrying? Matt's not the father." I tried to look surprised. "What?" "They got a DNA test done last week. Turns out all of this was for nothing." She shook her head. "Mom doesn't know who the father is. She was seeing someone else too, someone she won't talk about." She went inside, leaving me sitting on the steps with the weight of her words pressing down on me. All of this was for nothing. Matt had destroyed his career for a baby that wasn't his. Kara had ruined our marriage for a man who wasn't even the father of her child. And I had spent 6 months plotting revenge against people who were as confused and hurt as I was. But even knowing that, I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for them. That evening, I drove to the Rusty Anchor. It was a Thursday night, which meant the place would be busy but not packed. Perfect for what I had in mind. I found Matt sitting at the far end of the bar, nursing a beer and staring at the television like it held the secrets of the universe. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing clothes that hung loose on his shrinking frame. "Mind if I join you?" I asked. He looked up, startled. "Eli, what are you doing here?" "Having a drink, same as you." I ordered a beer and sat down on the stool next to him. For a few minutes, we drank in silence, watching a basketball game neither of us cared about. "Heard about the DNA test," I said finally. His shoulders sagged. "Yeah. Must have been a shock." "You could say that. So what now? You going to stick around, help Kara raise another man's baby?" He turned to look at me, and I could see something broken in his eyes. "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore." "Want some advice?" "Not really." "I'll give it to you anyway. Leave town. Tonight. Don't pack. Don't say goodbye. Just get in your truck and drive until you hit a place where nobody knows your name." "Why would you tell me that?" "Because staying here is going to destroy what's left of you. And despite everything that's happened, I don't want to watch that." He was quiet for a long moment, considering my words. "What about Kara? What about Emily?" "Kara made her choices. Emily's going to college. They'll both be fine without you." "And you? What are you going to do?" I finished my beer and stood up. "I'm going to figure out how to be the man my daughter thinks I should be." I left him sitting at the bar, and I never saw him again. I heard later that he'd taken my advice, that his truck was gone from Kara's sister's driveway the next morning, and no one knew where he'd gone. Kara had the baby 3 months later, a daughter she named Grace. I never found out who the father was, and eventually I stopped caring. What mattered was that Emily came home for the birth, and for the first time in almost a year, she looked at me like I was her dad again instead of a stranger. "Thank you," she said when I visited her and the baby at the hospital. "For what?" "For letting him go. For not making this worse than it had to be." I looked down at Grace, this tiny person who had inadvertently caused so much chaos, and felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but something close to it, a willingness to stop carrying the weight of other people's mistakes. "She's beautiful," I said. "Yeah, she is." Emily handed me the baby, and I held her carefully, remembering when Emily had been this small, this perfect, this full of possibility. "What happens now?" Emily asked. "Now you go to college. Your mom figures out how to be a single parent, and I figure out how to be happy again." "Think you can do that?" I looked at my daughter, this strong, wise young woman who had somehow managed to love both her parents despite everything we'd put her through. "Yeah," I said. "I think I can." 6 months later, I was working in my garage when Sam stopped by with a bottle of wine and a curious expression that I'd learned to recognize. "Got some news," she said. "Good news or bad news?" "That depends on your perspective." She told me that Kara was struggling financially, that raising a baby alone while trying to rebuild her real estate career was harder than she'd expected. She told me that Emily was thriving in college, making friends and getting good grades, and slowly healing from the trauma of our family's implosion. And she told me that she'd been thinking about us, about the possibility of something more than friendship. "What do you think?" she asked. I looked at her sitting in my garage, surrounded by the tools and projects that had kept me sane through the worst year of my life, and realized that I was ready to stop looking backward. "I think," I said, "that some stories end exactly when they're supposed to." I kissed her then, tasting wine and possibility and the promise of something new. Outside, I could hear the harbor bells ringing in the distance. marking time in a town that had watched me fall apart and put myself back together again. The game was finally over, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I'd won.